Okay, so welcome to today's session on networking without the awkward, real skills for real connections. My name is Stacy Robinson, and I am a career coach here with American Public University Session, and I will be leading our session today. If you have any questions along the way, we will take some time to answer those at the end. So start thinking about how networking, how you view it at this time, and how you might view it a little differently when we're finished today. So today we will cover understanding how networking supports your career growth, those job referrals that are so important to us, and our professional reputation. How networking can allow you to build confidence in those formal and informal networking settings. How you can improve your LinkedIn and online professional presence. That includes CareerLink, our networking platform as well here with the university. How you can create a concise, flexible elevator pitch, and how to follow up effectively and build resilience through practice. So let's jump in. Before we get into tips or strategies, I want us to slow down for a minute and talk about why networking actually matters. Because for a lot of people, the word itself already brings up significant discomfort. If networking has ever felt awkward, forced, or like something that you're bad at, you're not alone. Most people were never taught how to do this in a way that feels authentic and human. So, one thing I really want to clear up right away, networking is not about selling yourself or convincing someone you're impressive. Networking is simply a career amplifier. It is a support system. It's relationships over time. If you've ever had a conversation where someone gave you advice, encouraged you, or pointed you in a direction, you were networking. You just didn't call it that. This isn't about becoming someone you're not. It's about staying connected as yourself. So here's a reality that surprises a lot of people. About 70 to 80% of roles are found through relationships or referrals, not job boards. That doesn't mean people are getting hired because of favoritism. Rather, it usually means someone heard about an opening earlier than it was to be posted. Someone shared a resume, or someone said, you should talk to this person. Networking gives you access to information, not just job applications. So when we think about networking, we often jump straight to jobs. But connections offer so much more than that. Your network can offer so many different things: guidance and mentorship, people helping you make sense of your next steps. Networking can offer you insider knowledge, what roles are really like, or how hiring works for a specific company. Your network can offer job leads, of course, sometimes before they're even posted. But it also builds your professional reputation, people knowing your name and what you're about. And for many people, it's not one big connection, it's a few steady ones that make the biggest difference. This matters even more if you're an adult learner, if you are changing careers, or maybe you're transitioning from the military to civilian work, or even just taking a nonlinear path. When your background doesn't fit neatly into a box, your network helps translate your experience. They can help you see how your skills carry forward and help others see it too. Networking isn't about starting over. It's about connecting the dots between where you've been and where you're headed. So let's do a quick, quiet reflection just for you. Take about 10 seconds and think about this question. Who helped you most recently in your career? You can even drop your answer in the chat if you wish to share. Now, this could be someone who gave you advice, encouraged you. Maybe they made an introduction or helped you see something differently. That was networking. You're already doing this, you're just learning how to do it more intentionally today. So let's start with this idea. Not all networking spaces work the same way, and they shouldn't be approached the same way either. So let's start with formal events. So some examples of formal settings might be career fairs, conferences, employer information sessions. So in these spaces, conversations are usually short. Introductions are expected, and there's more structure and movement in these settings. So in these settings, you're not meant to tell your whole story or do a resume dump. You are just making brief contact and moving on. And that's enough. So then we have informal spaces. This could be classes, meetups, community groups. These tend to be lower pressure, they're more conversational, and they tend to be more relationship focused over time. In informal spaces, curiosity does more work than confidence. And then there are digital spaces like LinkedIn comments, group chats, Slack or Teams channels. These absolutely count as networking, even if it doesn't feel like it. If in-person conversations feel hard, digital spaces are often a more comfortable entry point. So now let's take some time to focus on the social and emotional skills that you use when networking. First would be reading the room. One of the most helpful skills you can build is learning how to read the room. Even if it's not a physical space, you can still read the room when you're online. When you're reading the room, you're learning to think and observe before you speak. So take a moment to notice, is the energy fast or is it relaxed? Are people lingering or are they moving quickly? And who is doing most of the talking? When you match the pace of the room, conversations feel easier and less awkward. Next, let active listening be your superpower when you're networking. I want to say this clearly. You do not have to be the most interesting person in the room. Listening well is one of the strongest networking skills there is. Here is a simple structure to show you have been actively listening to someone. Repeat what they've said, phrasing it with, so what I'm hearing is, to make sure you've understood them. You could reflect on what they've said by starting with, that sounds like a big transition, or acknowledging what you've heard. You can also respond to what they've said. Something as simple as, how did you get into that? Could then spawn a deeper conversation. And if you're already doing these things, you are already connecting. Third, let's talk briefly about body language. Not anything dramatic. Small things that help would be comfortable eye contact. And if you're digital networking and you're on camera, looking at the camera on your device rather than the screen, even though that feels counterintuitive, provides a more authentic and genuine interconnection. Have a relaxed posture, an open stance, a small neutral smile. This isn't about acting outgoing, it's about looking approachable. Let's focus in on a key skill when networking in person: conversation openers and closers. Now, we often hear there's a lot of anxiety that comes from not knowing how to start or even how to end or close a conversation in these types of settings. Simple, natural openers you could start using today might be, what brought you here today? Or how did you hear about this event? What are you working on right now? These are simple guides to engage in a conversation with someone. They don't have to be deep or overthought. just genuine and authentic. Some examples of some gentle closures to a conversation might be, "It was really nice talking to you. I'm going to step away, but I'm glad we connected. Would it be okay to stay in touch?" You're not asking for a lot, just asking if they would be open to it. Are some great ways to end a conversation politely. It's not rude, they are respectful closures. So let's do a quick, very low pressure practice. No speaking, no breakout rooms. I am going to read 3 openers, and as I read them, feel free to use the thumbs up reaction if it feels doable to you, or just notice which one feels least uncomfortable. You might even choose more than one. So the first one would be what brought you here today? Or how did you hear about this event? What about what are you working on right now? And while they might not feel comfortable to you at this time, with a little practice, these will gain you more interest. They will open you up to connecting with others in these settings. You don't need 10 openers. You just need one you can rely on, and you can use it because you'll be interacting with different people. So you're not repeating yourself. So now we're going to spend a few minutes talking about your online presence. We're going to specifically focus on LinkedIn, but this does apply to CareerLink, our networking platform with the university, and any other professional networking spaces you might be involved in. And I want to start by lowering the bar a little. You know, when you get into LinkedIn and you look around, it can feel very overwhelming. It might feel awkward. You might feel performative, or it might just simply be exhausting to you. That's completely normal. A lot of people assume they're doing it wrong because it doesn't feel natural. So, our goal here today is to not turn you into a content creator or make you sound like someone you're not. The goal is simply this: when someone does come across your profile, a recruiter, a hiring manager, or a connection, it should clearly tell your story without you having to explain yourself. So let's focus in on some LinkedIn basics that actually matter. Let's start with the basics that make a difference because not everything on LinkedIn carries the same weight. First, it's your headline. So when you're creating your headline or when you're revising your headline, a good rule to remember is clear is better than clever. Your headline doesn't need to be catchy or impressive. It just needs to help someone quickly understand who you are, what you do, or what you're exploring. Think of it as answering one simple question. If someone only read this one line on your LinkedIn profile, would they know why they should keep reading and learning more about you? Next is your About section. And this is often where people feel stuck. So instead of thinking of it as a formal summary or a regurgitation of your resume, think of it as a short story plus some direction. So you're briefly sharing what you've done, what you're good at, and where you're heading. That's it. You don't need your entire work history here, just enough context so someone understands your path and what you are aiming toward. Next key section of your LinkedIn profile is your experience section and those keywords that you should be using. This part isn't really about impressing people. It's about helping the right people find you. So a helpful tip is to keep looking at job postings you're interested in and notice the language that they are using. Those words matter. When you reflect that language of a job posting that you're interested in your LinkedIn profile, just like you do in your resume, that language in your experience section is making it easier for others to recognize that you're a fit. Work on making digital networking feel natural, because this is where a lot of pressure tends to show up. I want to introduce you to a mindset shift that helps this feel much more manageable. Connection comes before conversation. So you don't have to message people right away. You don't have to even ask for anything. Instead, start small. Start by joining just 2 or 3 relevant industry or alumni groups. That's more than enough. From there, engage lightly, comment thoughtfully, react when something resonates. You don't want to go through and just like every post that you see. Be genuine and authentic. Tailor your responses to the industry that you are in or the industry that you are seeking. Acknowledge ideas that you genuinely found helpful. This builds familiarity without putting you or the other person on the spot. And when you do decide to connect, the insight plus appreciation formula plus action formula works beautifully. You're naming something specific that you noticed, you're sharing why it mattered, and you're suggesting a low pressure next step. Something as easy as just asking to stay connected. There's no pitch, there's no ask, just a human interaction. So the big takeaway here is this. Your online presence doesn't have to be loud, polished, or perfect. It just needs to be clear, honest, and aligned with where you're headed professionally. Small, consistent actions, not big performances, are what make LinkedIn work over time. And one thing I do want to interject here is I want to remind you that these professional platforms are strictly that. They are professional. It's not faced in, or it's not Facebook. It's not Instagram. Those are your personal spaces. LinkedIn, CareerLink, those are reserved for professional presence only. So be very aware of what you are posting, because employers do take a look at your LinkedIn presence. Here's an example of what a connection message could look like. I appreciated your post on or about X, especially your point about Y. I'm exploring this field and found it really helpful. I'd love to stay connected. Notice what's not happening here. There's no ask, there's no pressure, there's no request for a meeting or a referral. So this is the big takeaway I want you to remember. You don't need to ask for anything right away. Relationships build over time. And this approach keeps things comfortable for both you and the other person. Before we jump into our next topic, your elevator pitch, I want to pause for just a moment and make sure we are all on the same page, because not everyone uses this term every day, and it can feel daunting to think about. When we say elevator pitch, we're simply talking about a short, informal introduction you might use when someone asks, "So, what do you do?" That is called an elevator pitch, because in theory, you could share it in the time it takes to ride an elevator. But in real life, it's just a brief way to explain who you are, what you're focused on, and where you're headed professionally. And if hearing the phrase elevator pitch immediately makes this feel stressful, I want to normalize that. Most people don't struggle with this because they don't have experience. They struggle because they're trying to say everything at once, or they're worried about sounding impressive. That's not the goal here. An elevator pitch is not a sales pitch. It's not a personal brand statement, and it's definitely not something you have to memorize word for word. The real purpose of an elevator pitch is reducing anxiety. So when someone asks you, "So what do you do?" you're not scrambling in the moment. You already know where to start. That's why having a simple structure helps so much. We're using a 4-part formula today, and I want you to keep this in mind as we walk through it. Think clarity, not perfection. You're not trying to impress anyone. You're helping them understand you. And when you remove that pressure of trying to impress, it makes creating your elevator pitch much easier and less stressful. The first part is who you are. So this could be your name, your background, or how you generally identify professionally. Simple is more than enough. The second part is what you do or what you're good at. This is where you can highlight your strengths or experience without listing your entire resume. Think about your professional summary that you would put on the top of your private sector resume. That's a good guide for this part of your elevator pitch. Third is what you are aiming for professionally. This is especially important if you are in a transition period. It's completely okay to say you're exploring, pivoting, or moving towards something new. That context actually helps people understand your story. And finally, how someone could connect or help. This doesn't need to be a big ask. It might just simply asking to stay connected or offer some help. This doesn't need to be big. Learning from others or hearing how someone navigated a similar path or other ways. Let's look at the example on the slide. I'm Stacy, a logistics professional with 8 years of experience supporting operations in the military. I'm transitioning into civilian supply chain roles and would love to connect with others in operations or learn how they made a similar shift. So what works here is that it's clear, it's specific, and it's honest. There's no pressure, there's no overselling, just enough information for someone to respond naturally. And it doesn't have to be memorized. It's just a general guide. One last thing to remember, your elevator pitch is flexible. You may tweak it depending on who you're talking to, whether it be a recruiter, a peer, or someone in your network. But having a base version means you're never starting from zero. So in the next slide, we'll give you a chance to try this out in a very low pressure way. Remember, this is a draft, not a final answer. It's clear and human, and it beats perfect every time. Take a minute or two to just jot down a 2-sentence version of your own pitch using the formula on the previous slide. And as you do this, I want to emphasize one thing. Focus on being clear and human, not impressive. This doesn't have to be perfect, and it's not final. It's something you can refine over time. The goal is simply to have something ready so you don't feel caught off guard when the question comes up. So I will put that slide back up for you to refer to. And if you would want to jot it down, I'm open to having anyone share what they come up with in the chat so we could take a look at how your thinking is. And I've put that 4-part formula back up. Who you are, what you do or what your strengths are, what you're aiming for, and how someone could connect or help. And I would love it if someone would like to share theirs in the chat. All right, we'll give it about 1 more minute if you're working on a draft of your elevator pitch. Remember, this is something that our coaches here at American Public University System can assist you with. We do have industry specific coaches that can give you tailored support. Maybe you have a networking event coming up and you want to talk through some introductions or you want to some additional help crafting your elevator pitch. We are here to support you with that. So we've got, hi, I'm Maria, a regulatory compliance specialist with 3 years of experience supporting Hilton's timeshare legal department. I'm transitioning into an environmental policy management role and would love to connect with others or learn about who can aid in such a shift. Excellent, Maria. That follows that formula exactly. And it's something you could tailor based on who you're speaking with. Great job. Thank you, Maria, for sharing. So think about your elevator pitch. This is something that you could circle back to, and we'll move on. And right now, what you have is a rough draft, but that's a big step forward. Now I want to talk about the part of networking that trips people up the most, and that's follow up. For a lot of people, the conversation itself might be manageable, but once it's over, the questions start. What do I say? When do I send something? Am I bothering them? Am I being annoying? If that sounds familiar, that's very normal. I want to offer a really simple framework that takes the pressure out of following up. First is timing. Aim to follow up within 24 to 48 hours. That keeps the interaction fresh, but it doesn't have to be immediate or even perfect. Secondly, reference the interaction specifically. Mention something specific that you talked about, even if it was just briefly. This helps the message feel human, authentic, and not generic. Thirdly, express gratitude. A simple thank you for your time or I appreciated the conversation will definitely go a long way. Fourth, suggest some next steps, only if it makes sense, though. So this could be asking to stay connected, asking them a question, maybe even scheduling a short follow up. And it's okay if there is no next step yet. There might be one that comes up organically down the road. Follow up is about maintaining connection, but not forcing momentum. So now let's think about how we can handle those common obstacles that happen along the way. Let's talk about rejection for a moment, because this is part of the process. If someone doesn't respond or says no, that's redirection. It's not a personal failure. It doesn't reflect on you or your interaction. It doesn't mean you did something wrong. It just means that connection wasn't the right fit right now. What about when you don't know what to say? If you ever freeze and think, I don't know what to say, default to small questions. For example, do you have any advice for someone exploring this field? Or is there anything you'd recommend I look into next? Curiosity is almost always welcome. When networking, it is often easier if you shift from big goals to what we call micro connections. So, this is one of the most helpful mindset shifts. Letting go of those big networking goals and focusing instead on 2 to 3 micro connections per week. This keeps networking from feeling overwhelming and helps build consistency. So you might be asking, well, what are micro connections? What might that look like? Something like commenting thoughtfully on someone's post, sending a short thank you message, asking one person for advice or insight. These actions may feel small, but over time they add up to real relationships, and they are excellent examples of those micro connections. So I want to leave you with this. Networking is not about doing everything all at once. It's about showing up consistently in small ways. If you can do a few things well, gently, and regularly, you're doing this right. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with one main takeaway. Networking is a skill, it's not a personality trait. You don't have to be an outgoing person. You don't have to be polished, and you don't have to change who you are. So, like any skill, networking gets easier with practice, and especially with small, low pressure practice. If there's one thing I'd invite you to do in the next 24 hours, it's this. Take one small action, a micro connection. Comment on someone's post, send that brief thank you message, reach out to one person with a simple question. Nothing big, nothing perfect, just one intentional step.